citywide. Can you talk about how other cities, maybe Columbia, I don't know, govern, or how many have those boards rather than city council?
You know, I don't have the specific number, but my sense Columbia is also a department of the city.
Mm-hmm.
They too have a citizens advisory board like you are, which has, depending upon what year you were talking about, more or less influence. I would say today, the advisory board, the Water and Light Advisory Board is what it's called there, probably doesn't have much juice. You all are far better judge of how much juice you think you all have as it relates to the city council, and I'm not going to substitute my judgment for that. But Springfield, as I mentioned, does have a board, long-standing board. Springfield's current city charter is 1945 vintage, and that's when the board started operating there. And most smaller communities are a department of the city, and they report to a city administrator or a mayor kind of thing. MPUA is interesting. We have Springfield, which is the largest. We have Independence and Columbia, which are real similar in size, the next tier down. And then we have a lot of members who are Marshall, Rolla, Poplar Bluff, Sykeston, that 12 to 20,000 citizen range. We have quite a number that are in the 5,000 population range. And then we have probably more than any of those others that are 1,000 citizens, 1,500 citizens. I think it's probably true, and I'm even going to go out on a limb. I can get you this information, but I'm going to go out on a limb and say the significant majority are departments of the city. But in a community of 1,500, that's a little different than a community of Independence size or Columbia size. Or Springfield size, a little easier to do. I've been to lots of those Board of Aldermen or City Council meetings, and the fanfare and the formality of governance is certainly a lot lower, and that's fine if it works for them. That's just fine. Obviously, the larger the community, the more formality you have to have. The more formality you have to have. You all understand what I'm saying there. And that's fine too, but I've not ever been a police officer or firefighter or parks director or public works director, so apologies to, I don't mean to step on anybody's toe, but again, the utility is where the money is made. All the rest are money users. The electric utility is a money maker, and that money maker can help support lots of other things. In my vernacular, I call the electric utility in a town, if the citizens of a given city, just use Independence since that's where we are, were smart enough 100 years ago or 80 years ago or 120 years ago to create their own electric utility, they did it because they thought they could get better service doing it themselves. I don't think there would be any circumstance other than that. If they were smart enough to do that, they understood the value. And in so doing, they created, I like to call it a gold goose. And the gold goose lays golden eggs. And those golden eggs help provide parks and police and fire and all of those other general fund city services. The gold goose requires shining periodically. And so that means that pole that I'm looking at there, that happens to be just a street light. Well, that's just a parking light pole. I don't know that I can, there's power lines. I can't see the pole. Those have to be maintained. That's shining the gold goose. That's back to your question about taking a 12% decrease 12 years ago, 11 years ago, and having nothing on top of that. That's just not responsible. Both systems work. Departments of the city work. Boards of public works or boards of public utilities absolutely work. I'm biased towards giving the city council a little bit of that political buffer. I think probably better decisions get made over the long haul. And this business is every single day, 24 hours every single day, but it is also 20 and 30 and 50 years in the future. Because if these guys make a recommendation to you all and ultimately the city council that we want to go build a power plant as they were just doing, or buy into a power plant with other partners, those are 50-year decisions. Those ought to be made by good, clear-eyed business and professional people, I think. And there's certainly nothing wrong with a really good thought about the planet at the same time. We can coexist. We absolutely can. I think a community of this size would be well served by a Board of Public Works or Utilities.
Thank you. I've got one other question that relates to renewables and the rate of, you talked about going from coal and moving over. Do you have records on municipal and what the percentage of power? Do you have that readily available as a statewide association?
I probably don't have it within 5%, but let me generalize, and these guys might have it better. 10 years ago, 50% of all electricity in America came from coal.
Mm-hmm.
That number today is probably 35%. 10 years ago, natural gas was probably 20%. That number is probably doubled. It's probably 40%. 20% has come from splitting atoms. Well, since we started building nuclear power plants, it hadn't deviated much at all. Now, hydropower is a little piece, not a big piece. Certain parts of, if we were in Seattle today, you'd be talking about the Columbia and the Snake Rivers and all the falling water that we can harness. We obviously don't have that here. We do have some hydropower in this part of the world, but not a lot. So the piece that's grown, in addition to the natural gas segment, has been wind and solar. And wind today is, I'm going to say, you guys spot me here, 7 or 8% nationally. Solar might be 2 or 3, and even though those are both renewables, maybe collectively that adds up to reasonably close to 100. And some parts of the country have some geothermal. You know, there are little pockets of things. We have some landfills that we harness the methane and turn reciprocating engines with, but that's not big. So the question about the two big renewables, wind and solar, the wind is wonderful. You can put wind turbines out in a bean field or a cornfield, and I'm told that tractors have steering wheels and they can turn around those poles. But wind is not prevalent right now. And this is what these guys plan for today. It's those hot summer air conditioning afternoons. Now, if we do electrify more than we electrify today, that will begin to change, and we'll move more towards winter peaking when we're trying to heat a home from 30 degrees up to 70, as opposed to cool it from 100 to 70. But right now, the wind is prevalent at 3 o'clock in the morning. We are fortunate that we live right next door to this wonderful wind belt from Manitoba and Alberta and Saskatchewan all the way to the Gulf of Mexico. But it doesn't blow, largely speaking, on peak. Solar, on the other hand, is perfectly matched with the electric peak, because it's the two solar projects that you have, they're making electricity today, right now, when you really need it. Challenge with solar, of course, is it takes a lot of acres to make very much electricity. And so they to some degree, maybe wind and solar balance each other out. If you could have solar that was planted on poles that didn't interrupt land use, boy, you'd have an ideal solution. So whenever you all go into closed session and think about things, figure that out, and you'll have a real winner.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Anything else? All right, I've got just a few things I wrote down. First question I had was, do you know of any munis in Missouri or adjacent states that actually sold for utilities?
Yeah, we had one, Rich Hill, down south on 71 or 49, sold a couple of years to the local co-op. I'll just say most of those kinds of circumstance, we had one in Campbell, Missouri, which is down in the Boot Heel, maybe 10 years ago. Most of those circumstances, candidly, are where they've let their system decay in such a way as they couldn't keep the lights on. And, you know, it's probably true that after you get past a point of no return, the community doesn't have any appetite for spending the kind of money to bring it back. One of the things I haven't yet said is, wouldn't be uncommon in a conversation with Jim and Joe, with you, and maybe with the city council about how much money we're going to spend renewing the system.
Yep.
It wouldn't be uncommon for somebody in your role or a city council role to say, well, won't that pole last another year? In fact, most of the time, the answer is, yeah, it'll last another year. But when it fails, because it's 50 years old, the poles will last that long. When it fails in an uncontrolled circumstance, the outage is going to be longer and it's going to be broader than it otherwise would have been. Because when they change it out, they do that in a way that you keep the lights on in most cases. So the ones that have, my experience, the ones that have sold have allowed their systems to denigrate to the point where it didn't make any sense. I could probably give you 10 examples of communities of some size that wish they could municipalize. That's what it's called, municipalize. Boulder, Colorado got it done. San Francisco wants to get it done. Just two that come immediately to mind. There have been conversations in Missouri. I can think of a community right now in the southwest part of the state that's served by an investor-owned utilities. They would dearly love to buy that system and become a municipal utility. And we're doing everything we can to help them with information about that. That's hard to do because you've got to buy a really expensive asset. And the seller in these circumstances probably doesn't want to sell. And you know, to go out and recreate the distribution system in Independence and the metering system and all the substation system, all that goes along with that, that's real expensive.
Mm-hmm.
So there are certainly systems that do sell,
Okay.
but most of the time it's because they've just allowed themselves to go downhill.
Yeah, one of the comments I had was about deferred maintenance, like the ones you just mentioned. We haven't had a rate increase since 2012. We gave away back some money, but their costs kept continuing to increase.
Sure they did.
On material, on manpower, material that you can't get. It's
Well,
only that.
You know, we're still in a COVID-related supply chain problem, and our organization has a line crew that we provide to some of our members when they need to perform maintenance or when they have outages. And so we've been buying bucket trucks. And if you can get one scheduled inside of 3 or 4 or 5 years, you're doing well. And if you can get one that costs within 50% of what they bid it for 2, 3, 4, 5 years from now,
Yeah.
you've really done something special.
And the technology you get is going to be from 2 or 3 years before when you ordered it,
Yeah.
not the most current.
Yeah. So the cost associated with keeping the lights on in Independence have certainly gone up.
Mm-hmm. Another one too, we own the utility right now. It costs money to maintain it, to keep it current, whatever. If we sell that and then they go buyer's remorse, gosh, I wish we had that back. We'll never get it back. The cost would be too high.
As a practical matter, I think that's absolutely the truth. And not to think that just because you sell it, you don't pay the cost of maintenance.
Exactly.
You just pay it through higher rates to whoever
Yeah,
that
whomever. Yep.
buyer is.
Yep.
Now, though, if it's an investor-owned utility, which I assume it would be if the citizens ultimately voted to sell, they go to the Public Service Commission and get rate increases, which is talking about insulation. Well, that's 2 or 3 steps of insulation.
Oh, and they've also got to go to them to get approval to buy it.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
So, okay. Charter review, you've mentioned it a couple times. We're in Independence in the process of reviewing our charter right now. I think the last time it was reviewed in the 80s. So it's a few years out of
It's
date.
time.
It still talks about milking equipment in the stuff, so it's been a while since it's been updated.
Yeah.
It would be kind of nice to add something in there along the lines of what we've talked about, if that's possible.
It would be the ideal time
Yeah.
to create a board of public utilities.
Yeah.
While you've got the charter open, you know, every time you open a charter, you always have to think, okay, there's some stuff that's clearly out of date. But when it's open, then it's easy for other issues to come up. And so you sort of think, okay, we're going to open it up because we really need to, but what am I going to get?
We're doing page 1, first sentence. I mean, we're going through it very meticulously. We just got extended for another year.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Not surprised at all.
Yeah, yeah. So we're in the process of doing it every 2 weeks. And the last comment I had on here, you mentioned a couple of times, and I'd written down a note here to ask about apples to apples comparison.
Yeah.
We all know it's very difficult to take two things and look at them and say, has everything been included in this one and this one the same?
Yeah.
And that's something that you guys, the city, the council, us are really going to have to take a long time to look at that to make sure when we see a number, we know what makes that number up.
Yeah, and the difficult thing, you're exactly right. And the difficult thing about that in this circumstance, there's not likely going to be some period of negotiation with prospective buyers of the system until the citizens have voted to do that. I mean, if I were running an investor-owned utility that was headquartered in Kansas City, and maybe I would be interested in buying Independence Power and Light, I don't want to spend a lot of time. My father was in the real estate business. He would have said betting on the come. The staff work associated with making those decisions would be enormous for me and the people that I worked with. So you don't really get the opportunity for that apples and apples comparison until the citizens have said, we want to sell. Now, just because the citizens say they want to sell doesn't mean that you consummate a sale, because if you don't get the right deal, you don't. I mean, the language certainly should give an out at the end of the day. But the piece you can absolutely do before the fact is to make sure you fully understand all of the services that are provided by Independence Power and Light. Those can absolutely be on a spreadsheet,
Oh, yeah.
and they should be on a spreadsheet so that the citizens, again, if a question is put before them, truly understand all the services that they get from Independence Power and Light.
And I guess I want to make a note here. We've been talking about selling IPL. No decision's been made. They're just looking at what's the best use of IPL. What's it going to look like 20 years down the road, or whatever number they threw out.
Yeah, I'm absolutely aware there are two studies,
Yeah.
and at least in my mind, one just to sort of simplify it is: should we sell, or should we keep? And if we keep, what do we want it to look like?
Yeah.
And that's a really important consideration, because depending upon how that question is answered, or at least presented for your consideration, that might say, we don't want to sell.
Yeah, that is true. But I want to make that statement, especially folks that are listening to this, so we don't give them the impression that the decision's already been made. It has not. We're just in the process, kind of the investigative piece right now of what we're going to do. So
It's hard for me to imagine. You didn't ask me this question, but I'm a good politician always answers the question they want to answer, whether it was asked or not. I don't consider myself necessarily be a good politician, but I think the citizens, and therefore the customers of Independence Power and Light, will pay more and will get lesser service under different ownership.
and I would agree with that statement, and stuff I've looked at here recently, that's been the case. And so we owe it to the citizens to make sure that they get the best bang for their buck out of everything. So
My bias might have been showing through there just a little.
no, well, good politicians lie too, but that's okay. Any other questions or comments as we've gone through this?
Let me just say, Mr. Chairman, I'm delighted to be here. I'm always delighted to be with these two guys because they're good operators. And if there is something that I or our organization can do for you as you continue through this question, all you need to do is suggest it. We'll be here.
Well, I think I'd like to have you come back in, say, 3 months or so just to kind of get an update, hear what's going on, so we can, as we banter this, if we think of more questions or whatever. And sure, feed the questions through them.
Yeah.
So that you have it, but,
Be
do
absolutely
appreciate your
pleased
time.
to do so.
Do appreciate your time.
You bet.
Okay, anything else yeah, okay, great. Well, thank you very much.
You bet.
Okay, I guess now we're down to reports on finance and admin. As we've been
Hello.
talking about apples to apples comparison, now we're up to finance.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Mr. Twitty. I think those are all great comments, great information for the public. First thing I want to do is we have a few finance staff members not visiting, but decided to sit in on the PUAB meeting today. So I will introduce them. I'll just go left to right. Stacy McAllister is an accountant too, primarily handling the utility accounting. So you guys might hear these names at some point. In the middle is Jamie Roush. She is our finance operations manager, procurement, debt. If you guys want to say anything, feel free. And then on the right, Melissa Sill is our budget manager. So they got to sit in on a great meeting today because they all care a lot about everything we're talking about. So good job. Financials, these are the May financials, 11th month of the fiscal year. Everything, again, overall looks really good. Power and light, I'll just read what I wrote. All but connection charges are looking better than budgeted for revenue. And other services and supplies are overall over budget as line items, but overall expenses are still within the budget. There's nothing outstanding one way or the other, concerning, I guess is the better word, nothing concerning. So it looks really good. Water, all revenue is better than budgeted, except miscellaneous, and that variance is only $20,000. So again, all looks really good. Other services, the only expense line item that's over budget, but again, overall expenses are well within budget. So I think everything from the water standpoint is looking really good. And the title is sanitary sewer, but municipal, or whatever you want to call it, wastewater. It gets called
Gas department.
12 different things within the city. Penalties are under budget for revenue, which is different than the other two utilities because penalties have been running higher over budget. So could be something we need to look at budget on. Melissa's probably already got that handled for next year. Retiree benefits and capital operating are slightly over budget as expense line items, but overall, again, well within budget. So I think, again, all three utilities look really good, considering it's the 11th hour, if you want to call it that. I think we're in good shape. June financials, when they come out next month and we review them, of course, are preliminary and don't include audit adjustments, which I believe we talked about. For those of you who were here last year, we talked a little bit about what some of those audit adjustments are and how they affect financials for the financials, the audited financial statement. Our monthly financial statements don't always include all the audit adjustments that are required. Did anybody have any questions, any concerns, anything they were wondering about?
Any questions?
As always, call me if you do.
All right, thank you.
No problem.
How about municipal services?
We don't have anything new to report this time. I think Lisa reported last time that our biosolids handling is finally 100% up and going, so.
All right, good. All right, water, Mr. Dan.
So this is your last chance to grill Dan. It's not a summer.
Oh, we can petition you to get you back.
So that's true. I guess you could do that. Good luck with that. But
Peanut time.
yeah, as far as main replacement projects, we're continuing to do those. One of the projects, Northern Boulevard in Ralston, we're still waiting on materials for the contractors bid it, but as soon as he gets those in, the good news on Trail Ridge Drive and Pacific Avenue, that's north of Backyard Burgers, where I kind of relate to that. That's 4,000 feet. They've got that 2/3 of the way done, so they're moving right along on that. So that project's moving forward. And as far as if there's any other questions, I know we had a lot of discussion last time with Steve on the new credit card system and all that. So we got those all answered. Good. And I won't stir that up.
Yeah, let's not go there.
Good answer, Dan.
Okay, any questions of water? So this is your last meeting?
Correct.
Well, I've worked with you on the Stormwater Committee and a few other things over the years, and very much appreciate your professionalism, the way you approach your work and working with whatever committee I've been on. It's been a real pleasure.
Well, thank you.
Now, so you're going to be back next month, right? On a
Probably
contract
not.
basis or something?
Probably not going to happen, but
In
Any-
spirit.
in
Any
spirit.
citizen can come back, so.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's right.
We do have an opening or two, so
Okay. Good to know.
you could just sit on this side.
This is- yeah, duly noted.
Okay. What was that hand signal you made? Never mind.
Yeah.
But no, Dan,
Yeah.
it has been a pleasure. We do really appreciate your wealth of knowledge and what you've done for the city.
You're very welcome.
Okay, anything else for the water department? Gone, okay. IPL?
I am going to have Deputy Director give you the update on our upcoming rate changes. But before I did that, I did want to touch base real quick on the storm damage from the last weekend. If anyone watched the news or looked at some of the other websites, Board of Public Utilities in Wyandotte County lost almost half of their system. 29,000 out of 63,000 customers were out. Evergy had, I know at one point it was over 130,000 customers that were out. We had at our peak between 6,000 and 7,000. So we fared fairly well there. And our crews were on the job starting immediately Friday afternoon. We put them on round-the-clock duty from there out through the weekend. We did have our mutual aid friends from MPUA that came in and helped us on starting on Sunday. And with the exception of people who had to make repairs to their house, where like it pulled the mast down or pulled the box off the wall, we don't do those. And so in those cases, we were waiting on them to let us know that the repairs were done. All of our restoration was complete Monday morning. Now, some of those repairs were, say, temporary, a pole that was damaged, and so we shored it up. We will be going back through and actually doing permanent replacements on some of that. But our major storm restoration was done in 3 days. So again, your benefit of your local control and your local utility, it paid off for us once again in getting our folks back on as quick as we possibly could. And with that, I'm going to hand you over to Joe.
Good afternoon. So, wanted to quickly get information in front of you all about the upcoming rate restoration is what we're going to call it, because we're going back to the 2012 rates, right? I've been working personally with the assistant city manager and the city's communications team to develop what you have in front of you is really a communications plan. So we have heard loud and clear from the public, from you guys, from pretty much every resident, past communication issues, clear back from our previous billing to this change in payment system earlier this year. And we want to engage in the PUAB and the public in communications and how can we improve and be better. So this rate sheet or the rate restoration fact sheet is really something we've started. It's a straw man. We put it together. We're going to continue to add to it. It'll be live as we go along, and we'll get this in front of you each month as you guys have your meetings. And really what we're asking you guys for is continue to look over the FAQs, and if there are things that you guys are hearing out in the public on a consistent basis, please get it to us so that we can get that information out and continue to feed the public. Also, when you go to the bottom, you'll see the communications plan, and it carries over to the second sheet. And that really gives a timeline for how we're planning to communicate to the public what things are going to change and what it's going to look like. If everybody recalls, we kind of have two things happening at the same time. And really the big thing is the rate structure itself is being consolidated, and that was approved clear back in 2020 of October. And at that point, they put a 3-year sunset on that and said by October of 23, which is coming up here, everybody needs to be on the new rate schedule, which is simpler, easier to understand, and just more consolidated. At the same time, we're going to take that opportunity through the approved rate changes that were approved from the city council earlier this year. We're going to go ahead and remove that 6% discount that has been on the bills. So if you look at through these months, you'll see different articles, bill inserts, social media communications, and things we plan to do to keep the community engaged and understand that in October or November, when they get that first bill and it looks different than they've seen in the past, they understand, okay, here's what it used to look like, here's what the new stuff means, and it's not a shock to everybody, and we're not, all of us in this room, getting bombarded with, I did not know this was coming, I don't understand what's happening, so we're trying to be proactive in this, and we're asking for your guys' help just as well as anyone else. Riley over there has helped develop the sheet, and it's going to help develop the different content and presentations. You can see in August, we are going to be making presentations to City Council and PUAB on what those rate consolidations look like and talk about the bills. I don't know if you have anything else to add to that.
That sounds good. Everything sounds right.
Are there any questions?
Well,
with that?
one question, this talks about the 6%, this talks about the 6% rate restoration. And at one time, we had talked about 6% plus like a customer charge, like a $5. Is that something that's still in the plan for later on?
So those were looking outward, and those were projections that we had put that we will discuss in the future.
Okay.
So the first step, if you remember, we had all kinds of different steps in there. The first step was the 6%, removing that discount. So really, I believe the plan would be, let's do that first, let's evaluate for 2 years. And then any other increases or changes would have to come back to you guys and council anyway.
Okay.
Now, one exception to that is the new billing structure does have a $10 customer charge on it.
I thought,
And then for businesses and industrial, it's higher. But when that 2020 plan was put together, we essentially took the overall billing and we separated out a service charge with a energy charge.
Good.
So those who went, all the new customers that have come on since 2020 and anyone who chose to move over, they're already seeing that $10 charge. So that's not a change or an increase like we discussed in some of those future possibilities.
okay. All right. Any questions? Yeah.
One thing that, as I'm reading through this, how does this compare to other electric bills in surrounding areas? I know that we're low, and everybody in this room knows we're low. The citizens, when they see the bill, they don't understand that water is on it and sewer is on it and electric. All I hear is, my IPL bill is outrageous. I think we need to do something to clarify to the citizens that, IPL is not the only thing on this bill.
It's the light bill.
Yes, there you go.
So you're saying, so we can add to the education, especially when we do the next PUAB and city council presentations, maybe an overall discussion of what is on your bill, what does it look like,
I
and
think so.
call out that here's IPL's portion of your bill is here, and maybe some education on the general bill overall.
Right.
We can absolutely add that, and it sounds like a good idea because we hear it all the time too.
Yeah.
I like it.
Hey, it doesn't hurt to drip on them. Okay. Any other questions or comments?
Yeah, one. don't see anything about the community solar program here. I understand that subscribers to the community solar program get some kind of, they don't get the complete rate increase when the increase comes. Maybe you can talk about that.
The contract with people who signed up for to support the solar farm and participants in that, they have shares based on how much electricity they use. What they were guaranteed was that they would not be subject to future rate increases while they are on that program. That only applies to the energy rate. It does not apply to customer charges or other fees associated that are on the bill. I just had one customer contact us and ask about it, and I took their current bill and said, okay, you are currently paying, and I'm not gonna give you numbers because I'll be wrong, but I took what they're currently paying, and it's a tiered structure. The old rates, you had so many. You had this rate for the first 30 kilowatt hours, then you had so much for the next 70, and so much for 200 and 300. I took that first 600 kilowatt groups and averaged that out. That rate is higher than the energy rate that's going to be on the bills in October. So in his particular residential rate class, his energy rate, I'm not saying his bill's going down, but his energy rate is actually less than what he's currently paying. So he's at this point, there is not a increase that the solar folks have to worry about.
So it's a great question. I'm going to put it on the FAQs because I think
Yeah.
that's what you're getting at. Let's continue to educate,
Right.
and we'll get clarity and information about that so that
Right.
we inform in a good manner.
Yep, perfect, thanks.
Okay, anything else? All right.
Can you talk about this open house event and how many people might turn up for something like that in September?
So we're pretty early on in the planning process for that. Other than it being on a page, we haven't gone into a ton of planning unless Riley knows way more than I do
I
about it.
can tell you it'll probably be at the Independence Uptown Market. That's where we typically hold stuff like this. But aside from that, it'll likely be a weeknight event. It'll likely be a couple hours long after work hours, so people who have a 9 to 5 will have an opportunity to attend. But outside of that, we haven't had a ton of planning done on it.
It's one of those things you never know. I mean, we'll offer it for anyone who's interested. There was a tremendous amount of public discussion and interest in our proposed turbines a year ago, and I think 12 people showed up. So you never know.
That's a big number. Okay, all right, well, thank you. Now we're down to Deputy City Manager.
I really have nothing. The other night I said that Dan has probably attended about 960 council meetings in his career. So if you do similar math, this would be about like 450, 480 PUAB meetings. It's pretty extraordinary. Do you think about it? But, Dan will be missed. We'll miss his humor, for sure. That's great humor. He always brought great perspective to us, and certainly a person with rock solid integrity and ethics, and has really guided the water department for many years in a really. That's it.
Okay. All right, now we're down to board member comments. Quitting comments.
I found out recently from Christine, thank you for, I find out so much from Christina, that the board at some point, or not exactly sure how, but there's a rule that we have to meet in person. And my proposal is not to go back to COVID and we're all sitting somewhere in our basement on thing, but if someone's got just like city council, if you've got a reason you can't make a meeting, that the technology is now here, as I understand, that you could do that easily. I guess there was we're topped out on technology before, and that's why we drew that line. So my proposal, I guess I can make it as a motion, is that we operate as the city council does, where each member attempts to get there in person if at all possible. If there's some reason that they want to Zoom in for a meeting, that's possible. That's
So
also
you just want to have the electronic option, to be able to remote in
just as an
to a
individual.
meeting.
Second.
The city managers, the deputy city manager's talking now.
We've got a motion and a second. Discussion on that?
Yeah, before we commit to this, I know we have periodically unreliable technology in this room. So, case in point, yeah, projector no longer here. So I don't object to this whatsoever, but I do worry sometimes about our ability to reliably and consistently have those hybrid meetings. Those are very difficult for us to do.
We actually do it for the charter review. And usually about once every 2 weeks, somebody is remoting in on it. Like right now, we're broadcasting. I think there's a camera over there.
Phone is okay.
And when we had our meeting on Tuesday night, one of our members called in. It was just a circle speaking through it, no pictures. So
Steve Wagner, C7. Any questions for me?
well, is it possible if we've got somebody like Mr. McLucky here who would want to call into a meeting, or is that technology available for us to do that?
I think we can do it through Teams, actually. Have a phone participant. We do that a lot at City Council. We'll have people call into the Teams app. And that's actually, we have Teams is going right now. It's not a public link, but we're doing it because it helps Christina do speech to text and do the minutes more effectively. So it's actually a nice little life hack we have going right now.
So it is possible to do it.
Yeah, and I'm pretty certain it's pretty easy just to send someone a phone number to call into.
I think they did through Teams on Tuesday night when we had somebody
Sure.
needed to call because it was just a phone call, but they did it through Teams.
My big gripe about Teams, not really a gripe, but I always like to have people join a few minutes early, like 10 to 15 minutes early, just to make sure they can hear us, we can hear them, and more often than not, people kind of overlook that and just join late. And usually it's okay, but that's something I wish everyone knew going forward.
So I think what you're looking for is just the option to be able to do that.
That's all.
Not saying we're going to test it out every time, but yeah. Okay, thank you. So we got a motion and a second to accept electronic means to attend meetings. Any questions on that or discussion?
If you guys were absent, I want you to be still involved, you know.
Of course, you have to get dressed up if you're going to be on camera. Anyway,
Bathroom,
yeah.
at least from here up.
Yeah, sure, and don't stand up. Roll call, I guess.
Steve McLucky,
Yes.
Sherry Tyndall,
Yes.
Les Boatright,
Yes.
Michael Talcott,
Yes.
Anthony Jeremita.
Yes.
Okay. So, and at some point, I don't know when on our bylaws we had those, we've reviewed them or anything, or if that needs to be added to that. So,
You're asking if we need a review?
but I am. I'm not sure when they were done the last time, and we'll need to add this to it. But you and I can talk about it. Anything else, comment wise?
I have comments. I would also like to thank Dan. I didn't know him personally, but I could tell that integrity that Adam was mentioning was pretty likely. And every time he's mentioned the safety of the water, the consistency, I felt very safe that our water was in good shape. And that has been very valuable. I've, raised my 2 kids on this water, and we're staying put because it's good stuff. And so anyway, I hope you enjoy your future, and wish you well. I also want to thank IPL's teams for the damage repair. It was really fast, and I did hear on KCUR that we were ahead basically of the other communities in getting that done, and it's very valuable. So that accountability to your customers slash citizens slash ratepayers is really valuable to us. So thanks.
Yeah, I just want to say IPL did a fantastic job with this storm. My lights flickered once. That was it. I was stunned that we didn't have more power outages. So, and Mr. Montgomery, thank you. I've enjoyed working with you. Had some wonderful conversations with you. Really appreciate it. And good luck. Enjoy your retirement.
Same for me. Appreciate it, Mr. Montgomery. I've only been on here a year, but I've had some encounters with you. You've been very helpful and really explain things very well. So I want to wish you well too, and appreciate your time here too. So, and then I want to give you kudos also to IPL, and because I think ours just kind of bumped a little bit too, and then it just kept going. So I didn't even have time to go get the generator to set it out in the backyard, you know. So, but then I also want to make a quick comment, because there was an article that came out with Fox 4, and this is to show another positive of having local control over our utility, that Evergy's Missouri customers are going to peak pricing in October. So if you, their peak pricing is going to be from 4 to 8 p.m. And those prices are scheduled to go from 9 cents per kilowatt hour to 38 cents per kilowatt hour. And so, according to the article, and so what does everybody do when they come home? They cook dinner, they do their laundry, they do all their stuff between 4 and 8. And if you want to do the cheaper stuff, you get up at midnight to do your laundry. You do all of your stuff from midnight to 6 in the morning. And who's going to do that? So I just want to bring that up as a positive for us. I know the rates are bumping up here a little bit, but I think they're not going to be touching what Evergy's is doing between 4 and 8. So that's just another thing to give you some positive strokes.
Yeah, Evergy for a long time has been trying to do that time of use pricing and stuff, and they've had a hard time selling it, but they finally got it through. So it's going to be interesting to see how that goes, because that is the first thing, you know, when people get home now, don't open your garage door and use electricity. Don't do any of that. Sneak in just because of the cost. You can see it's coming. I really appreciate you all bringing in our speaker today, Mr. Twitty. That was really helpful. I think I took a lot of notes here and things I want to follow up on just getting here to kind of, so to speak, from the horse's mouth of what's been going on. Do appreciate that. And I appreciate the talking points here. I think you've got some good stuff here and stuff to add to it. So for those meetings. And anything else anybody's got for the good of the group? Okay, well, if nothing else, then I guess I'll make a motion, we adjourn. I don't know if you need a motion. It's been a while. Okay, then we're adjourned. Thanks.
Yeah.
Each group I'm in, they do it different. So I have that motion. On the charter review, we just get up and leave.
You roll out. So I really like the idea of restructuring changes in power dynamics. You know what?
Today's gonna be tough sell. They're not gonna wanna give up. They're not gonna give up the power. They're gonna wanna get away from it. It'll help them in your election.
All good. I'll still live here.
Watch out, where's my mics?
Is that right?
Yeah, those are good.
I'm gonna start doing some research.
I need to think more and look more into the community
And I said, well, in theory, according to the Public Service Commission, in theory, if you look at this as a revenue neutral, Evergy's not supposed to make, Evergy's not supposed to make bank off of this. It's supposed to be shifting people's money. But there are gonna be people who can't, well, if they opt out. But you know, it does, you can do that. Evergy's supposed to offer.
I don't necessarily think that every member, like, if we had a 9-member board, you have to have an odd number really.
If you want to get a better rate.
I think there's enough people